speaking now.
Sir, did you get to meet him?
He wants to meet me, so we'll see. He'll when he connects.
That'll be nice.
Okay, so I wonder whether is my communication and things clear? No disruption, because on the other side, I'm connected to the other video from Dubai. So if the bandwidth becomes too much.
It's okay. So far, so good. So far,
so far, so good.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. So I guess there are still people coming on. Somaji has come in. So it's time for us to begin. So namaste everyone and welcome to, this is actually the 11th seminar since we started in July last year. And not the 11th, the 12th seminar since we started in July last year. And the topic for today is the role of wellness in cultural settings. Stomaji and I will kind of give you a little bit of an overview in terms of a framework to think about. But finally, it is the interaction with you that really leads to the discussion on this subject. Stomaji, would you like to begin with any thoughts on this matter? You're muted.
Our original title was something like retreats in cultural settings.
That's you may be right. Let me just open up over there. The original title is indeed Importance of Retreats in Cultural Settings.
And I think that idea of retreats, I think, is an important thing for those of us that live in the modern world. Because those retreat times that we have are opportunities to set aside specified time to work on sadhana. You know, it's very easy for us to sort of find many things that seem to be more important at the moment than doing our practice. And when you take a retreat, you set aside time to give yourself the space to do some of the practices, especially the ones that are too lengthy or involved for sort of weaving into the ordinary pattern of life. You know, some of the longer relaxation exercises, for example. And so we encourage students in our tradition, in the Ahimsa tradition, to take regular retreats. We start people at just simple, like half a day. Half a day, turn your machines off, you know, no TV, radio, telephone, and you know, work on doing your japa practice intensively, and also practice indriyagupti, practice withdrawing a bit of the energy of your mind back through your senses to guard that, so that you can feel how the mind gathers strength and capacity when you do conserve that energy. So we start with half a day, then 3 days, then 5 days, then 10 days. Then after 10, the next increment is 40 days, which is a really interesting practice. In a 40-day silent retreat, typically we have people come to India and we have a spiritual guide for those retreats. And people are often given a special practice to do, some kind of practice with a special mantra or some particular set of yoga practices to focus on. From 40 days, the next increment is 90 days. I only know of one person who's completed 5 years silent retreat. And that was Swami Veda's ambition. When he took a vow of silence in 2013, he was hoping to complete 5 years of silence, but ended up leaving the body before that period was complete. And I think these are practices that show us what the human being is really capable of when we really focus on doing the work. People find all kinds of things happening in those longer practices. For example, I was on a 90-day retreat in 2008. And one of the people in our retreat was actually able to become clairvoyant. He was able to read the minds of the people around him. We were given an assignment of japa to do, a rather long mantra, 1/3 of a million repetitions of a certain mantra. And I calculated how much I should be able to do given the speed of my mind under ordinary circumstances. And I figured I could complete about half of the assignment within 3 months, and I'd have to do the rest on my own time, which was a little disappointing, but I committed to it anyway. So I start the retreat, and during the retreat, we're working on, when we walk, we keep our eyes a little ahead of our feet. We don't have our eyes, looking around all over the place. You withdraw the energy through your ears. You keep your physical body still so that you're not losing energy in physical movement. And over a period of some days and weeks of doing that, your mind gets faster and more powerful. And I was actually able to complete the japa assignment in 6 weeks, in half the time of the retreat. So my mind ended up operating 4 times faster than normal during this retreat period. And that's a pretty common experience that people have. And so it shows you what a human being can become when you practice intensively. And I hope for most people that it's inspiring. Some people think of retreats as a lot of work. I don't. I think of it as my ultimate vacation. It's sort of stepping into a divine playground where your sadhana becomes child's play. Let's see what we can do today. And if you enter into it that way, then it becomes a really happy, joyful thing to do. I had a good friend in India. She was from Singapore. She was a Sindhi lady who moved to Singapore after the partition with her husband, and they ran restaurants in Singapore for years. Raj was she was very well named. She was a very worldly person, and she ran things. She was very good at running things. And she was a wonderful cook. So, if you get an invitation to Raj's house for lunch, you don't say no. So I went over one day for lunch, and she made some beautiful saag and makiki roti. And so we were sitting there having our Punjabi lunch. And she said to me, "Oh, Stoma, I have come to do this silent retreat. I'm no yogi. I'm no Swami. I'm just doing this to please Swami Veda." And she went on and on like that for the whole lunchtime. The next day, she started her retreat. A week later, our paths crossed in the ashram. And ordinarily, when Raj and I meet in the ashram, it's a pretty noisy occasion because we really liked each other. And every day she would take an exercise break in the afternoon to walk the perimeter of the ashram for her daily walk. And I happened to be there when she was on her daily walk, and she didn't even look in my direction. She must have glanced in my direction because she gestured towards me with this, just move aside, don't bother me. Within 1 week's time, she had sunk into this experience of beauty and silence that was just so lovely to see on her. And she became kind of a silence addict. She would come back every year to do a silent retreat. She did 40-day retreats several years in a row. And then the last time she came, she decided to do a 90-day retreat. And I was actually coming off a retreat at that point. And during that 90-day retreat, she actually left her body. And it was not a sad occasion. Obviously we missed our friend, no doubt. and there was lots of grief that her family had and the rest of it. But we all realized that Raj had left her body exactly the way she wanted to in the middle of her meditation practice. So it was kind of a joyful cremation. It was just a wonderful experience. And so I encourage everybody at some point to make an experience with taking that kind of a retreat. You know, it's not escaping the world, and it's not even so much putting the world at arm's length. It's really going more deeply into the world, of experiencing the world in a deeper way with a more powerful mind. And what happens when you do that is that the beauty all around you begins to become more apparent. There's a wonderful poem by English poet Gerard Manley Hopkins called God's Grandeur. And it begins, "The world is filled with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil." And I never understood that line in the poem for years and years and years. I was given that poem as an assignment in high school to recite. And the line always bothered me a little bit. But not until I'd had a chance to be on a retreat like that and to look around me and to feel like this light was about to break out from everywhere, I understood what he meant by that. You know, divinity is waiting for you to see it. Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom is all around you and you don't see it." And Buddha's whole message was, wake up, you know, be mindful. And if you do that, if you really learn to strengthen and empower your mind in that way, then you begin to see divine beauty everywhere you look. And that is called brahmacharya. That's the real brahmacharya. Brahmacharya has nothing to do with sexuality at all, really. Even though that's probably the way that we lose the greatest amount of energy from our mind, and that's probably why it's so famous as a technique that has to do with sexuality. It's really about learning to see the beauty of divinity all around you. And that's the real Shri Vidya, to see the Shri of divinity shining in everything. And you get there by giving yourself the opportunity to go more deeply into the experience of living in the world by way of a retreat. How's that, Rajanji?
Excellent. Stomaji has given you the true essence of the spiritual purpose of a retreat. Now, if we look at each one of ourselves, the relevance of retreat in today's world has become a lot more important than it was a long time back. However, the concept of retreat in the traditional cultural settings of the world was around certain events. Like, for example, now, if you think in terms of the Chaturmasya that is observed during the rainy season, you know, Swamijis don't travel during that time. They are at the same place, and it is supposed to be a more meditative time. Similarly, there are 2 months in a year, and the 2 months in the year are approximately between mid-December and mid-January, and between between mid-July and mid-August, the 2 months. During that time, nothing new is begun by traditional Hindu families. They look upon those 2 months as the time when people are supposed to be more engrossed in, less affected by the external world, so that you can absorb within. Similarly, in the Islamic tradition, you have the things like the holy month of the Ramadan that they observe. Now, in religious settings, these type of places where around their religious system, they had various, things built in, so people can shut out the too much of the external activity. when we say too much of the external activity, you cannot avoid everything, but you can reduce the reactivity of having to deal with things in a more active way. Now, if you look back at the idea of the secular Western world, the concept of vacation that was developed initially was that kind of a purpose. The idea of a vacation is you don't have to worry about work, you don't have to worry about your home, you go away somewhere and everything is taken care of, and so you quieten your mind so that you have time for relaxation. But then what happens is the key difference between that kind of a vacation and a kind of vacation related to cultural retreats and yogic retreats is, in the cultural and yogic retreats, there is much more focus on the spiritual aspect. Now, in modern day, the idea of vacation has become sightseeing, going here, there, and sometimes people need a vacation after a vacation because they become so busy running around. Now, but that was not the original concept of vacation. And the other thing that comes along over here is, in the modern day world, with the advent of phones and our mobile connections, and the idea that you should be available 7/24 everywhere in the world, even when people go on vacation, their work does call them. And people are looking at their phone, responding to messages, email. So the modern concept of vacation has completely lost the earlier meaning, where it was supposed to be to quieten yourself in a retreat kind of setting. And so in modern day world, we need to bring back the concept of retreat, time when you can quieten yourself. Now, speaking for myself, because I have a lot of things coming onto my plate with the number of engagements I have with yoga, I do get stretched quite a bit. But on the other hand, it doesn't feel like it at each moment, because at each moment when I'm absorbed, that's the only thing I'm worried about. So I'm not worried about what's coming next. So so one of our good friends over here, I don't think he's here today, Dr. Ashok Agrawala, he suggested to me that I should cut down on travel and various other things. And in fact, I told him that when I travel and I go to Houston or Florida, that is actually makes me a lot more calmer than having to be in my hot seat at home over here. When I'm at home over here, I have to worry about taking care of my mother, what is going on in the kitchen, who is knocking on the door, what are the, people whom I have to deal with for this repair or that, this thing, or for that matter, taking care of the car or paying the insurance and bills. Everything comes in. So what ends up happening is, and of course, since everybody knows I'm not traveling, then everybody feels free that they should call me. And when I'm traveling and everybody knows I'm traveling, nobody bothers me, right? So what happens is, the real concept of the retreat or vacation comes when the normal things that hit you in the world, and you're unable to find the quietness when they go away, those things go away. And that is the real concept of the retreat. And of course, we can directly relate it to what the Yoga Sutra is telling us all about: learning to be a pure observer. And that is where you begin to realize yourself. You begin to realize not only the inner harmony, but also what our relationship with the cosmos is. And that is where awakening of various things happen, as Tomaji was mentioning about the clairvoyance that came to a person who was in the retreat, right? So that is the real role of retreats as we go along.
Rajanji, Swami Veda often used to say, he would complain to his master. He said, "You have all these advanced disciples in the caves of the Himalayas. Why can't I go to the caves?" Mm-hmm. And the master would say, I need you in the world. I need you to do my programs. And so he would even with terrible heart disease, he would typically go around the world about twice a year. And he said, you know where my Himalayan cave is? International airports. Nobody bothers you in an airport. Nobody
Exactly.
cares who you are. You're completely alone. It's totally solitary. You might as well be sitting in the Himalayas. And the other thing that occurred to me is when paid vacations came into American business, it came through a former governor of Minnesota named Elmer Anderson, who was the CEO of Fuller Brush Company back in the 1940s. And he had some rules that came along with this. If you took a paid vacation in their company, you could not sit at home and work on your house. You had to go somewhere different. You had to do something different, have a change of scene, refresh your creativity, do something to recreate yourself so that you would come back to work a more creative person. He did the same thing for other kinds of personal leave. You had to figure out a way to use that time constructively, which I think is a really important principle.
Actually, it's so interesting, so much you mention it. My father used to work for a company where, as part of the vacation, they will buy for you the tickets wherever you need to go. All you needed to tell them is where you needed to go for the vacation. They will take care of all the tickets and arrangement. So when I was growing up, all through my period as a family vacation, we would go to some exotic place elsewhere every year.
I have a question, Somaji, and for Dr. Rajan. 40 years ago, life was different, and now it is different. Even, people who have a little more time, you are engaged in doing so many things, much more things than you did. And say you take a vacation, just like Dr. Rajan said, that you have to take a vacation after its vacation. The human body, of course, physically, like if you stop exercising, you lose like 25% in 2 weeks and then 50% in 4 weeks. And they say that that's why you should exercise every day. That's a physical body. Now, when it comes to mental setup, what is the frequency you should be doing this? Because you can't take a retreat or a vacation, or even when you have a weekend every single week. You don't take a vacation on Saturday and Sunday. It's supposed to be for relaxation. You're busier on Saturday and Sundays than weekdays when you're working, where you get a lunch break or an evening off or something. So what should be the frequency of this rejuvenation or retreating yourself, or going basically into a quiet environment? Because it is just not possible more than, say, a couple of times a year. So what should we do to have a vacation every day? Is that a relevant question?
Every person's need about that is different, because of course everybody has a different personality.
Right.
I suspect if you enter into it in the right spirit, if you enter into it as a sort of joyful exercise of silence, and you enjoy the experience, you're probably going to want to do it more and more. Okay. And I have at sometimes in my life, like there was a period when I had very little time to sit and do japa. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do my japa in between sentences as I talk to people in therapy during the day. And I did that experiment for several months, and it was really interesting, because what happened is, as a therapist, I got a lot quieter. So the clients, when I checked with them, that meant that I was listening more. And most of them told me, I kind of like it when you don't talk so much. Which was a little disappointing, but I mean, it meant that effort to sort of maintain that silence as a steady state thing, moment to moment, is a way to sort of take the beauty of the retreat back into your life with you in a way that it doesn't have to intrude on the rest of your life. It doesn't have to intrude on the things that you need to get done, but it can allow you to rest for 2 or 3 minutes in between other tasks, and maybe you won't get so tired.
Thank you.
Now, I have a slightly some things to add over here, Sundaraji, relative to what you said. The question you asked was, how can we make that into a daily thing, right?
Yes.
And this is where I think the role of meditation on a regular basis twice a day comes. And what happens is, when you wake up in the morning, if you can wake up without any agenda in your mind, thinking about what the day is going to bring, and the first hour of the day or half hour of the day, you can keep the quietness within and be a pure observer. And by the same token, towards the end of the day, again, you take another half hour time to be that way. That is, in many ways, like giving yourself a mini vacation for a short period of time every day. Now, what was happening is, when we were in this book project that we were all involved in, that was going through till the end of last week, I was every day working over there. And what happens is, the morning time is the freshest part of the day when there is clarity in the mind, and I like to work at that time. So, to some degree, and the mind is always working. What next? What next? What next? So I told some people, and you remember I said on Monday when we were at our meeting, I'm on vacation the next 3 days, right?
Yes.
So the idea was, during the next 3 days, that is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, while I attended meetings and things, I would not go to my computer other than to attend meetings. I just wanted to have that quietness and be able to observe things as they are, without having to say, I have to go and do something. And that was very restorative for me those 3 days. And I'm still in that same mood now, even though I'm doing a little bit of things here and there and things like that. But that is how I would look upon in terms of finding your own little retreat within the period. And of course, I think culturally, in all spiritual settings, they look for a longer period of retreat than the said. The daily practice is required, but on the other hand, on an annual basis, to be able to take a lengthy time when you can have the retreat is highly encouraged in every spiritual cultural setting that I know of. Somaji, would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amit Gupta, go ahead.
So yeah. So what is the thing you say, like in japa, like when you between the sentences? To Stomaji.
Yeah. Well, I'm using my personal mantra at that point, because the japa of that mantra is pretty refined and subtle. It's not even really words at this point. Just a vibration in my mind, and I entertain that, bring that vibration forward in between my sentences. That's how I would do it.
Got it. Thank you.
Any questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking I will say Ram Ram, just it's kind of easy to me.
Sure. You can use a personal mantra that you've been initiated into. You can use a name of divinity that is close to your heart. When we're working with students in the beginning, we usually use the Hansa mantra, hum with the exhalation, so with the inhalation.
Okay.
Yeah, so any of those things will work. You can even count. If you're not a religious person, even for an atheist, you can count with the breath back and forth, and
right.
that works just as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Hemaji.
So what I started doing is every day in the night time, I go in my bed and I do the Hanuman Chalisa first. And while doing Hanuman Chalisa, I listening to it actually. I do Ujjayi breathing So for complete 10 minutes, I'm doing Ujjayi breathing. And right after that, I go into meditation. And I start doing like about 10 minutes. Sometimes I just don't want to get out of my meditation. And I go sometimes 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And it's just perfect for me, the practice in the night time, because nobody bothers me and I'm just to myself and I do it. So it just helps me. So just for Sundaraji, I was just trying to mention it to her so that nighttime is our time. Nothing bothers you. So I
Thank
do
you.
that in the nighttime and it's so nice and quiet and you just go into it so easily and it helps me a lot. And I sleep
Actually,
better.
are you able to fall asleep well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, what happens is, from what has been observed in meditative practices, both from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's side and from my own experience, is that when people need to clear out a lot of the karma kleshas within oneself, then in which case, at that time, if you meditate before going to sleep, then in which case the deep relaxation that it creates helps you to fall asleep very easily. Whereas on the other hand, when the karma kleshas become less, then when you do meditation before falling asleep, it refreshes you so much and you're so awake that you're unable to fall asleep. Somaji, would you like to comment on that?
It's a common experience for people who have used relaxation exercises to go to sleep, that after a while, that's exactly what happens. They end up being more wakeful. And so as you get better and better at relaxation, we usually suggest that you move that practice away from your sleep time so that it doesn't intrude. But, like I was saying before, every person is a little different. And especially if you're kind of an anxious person, that kind of practice as you're going to sleep can be very helpful. And it can help you eventually go into your sleep consciously. You can maintain your awareness as you go deeper into those layers of sleep. And that's one way to learn Yoga Nidra.
Well, if there are no questions and you would like to see what is going on in Dubai, I can plug you in there. If you would like to listen to the talk that they recorded for the Dubai program on wellness, I can play that too.
Yes.
Yes,
We
I
would
think.
like to hear that.
Sure.
Any other suggestions, questions? Okay. The thing is basically, first let me show you what is going on in Dubai. So if you want to see it, so here we go. And then after that, I can pull up the thing recording if you want to see that too.